Hi, I'm Amy and welcome back to my channel. I'm a relationship mentor and I specialise in healing attachment styles so that you can feel secure and fulfilled in your relationships. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about and discuss why you might not feel good enough. And this is a core wound that a lot of us have, particularly if you are anxious, preoccupied or fearful avoidant. Even dismissive avoidants have this core wound of I am not good enough, and I'm going to discuss where that might come from and what you can do about it. So stick around to the end of the video and I will give you all of my hints and tips on how I managed to overcome this belief that I just wasn't good enough. If you like this content, please consider subscribing to this channel and giving this video a like so that other people have access to it and can apply this into their own lives as well. So let's get started. The belief that I am not good enough. When we believe that at our core we are not good enough, this can affect every single area of our lives, and we might walk around with this underlying feeling of unworthiness, and this feeling may well be completely unconscious because we're that used to feeling it. And what my journey has taught me is that this belief is rooted in childhood. So let me give you a real life example. So my parents were overly critical. So whenever I tried to do something, because I wasn't praised for it, I personally felt like what I'd done wasn't good enough. And if I'd done something that really wasn't good enough, this would be exaggerated and this would be really focused on. So I grew up with this belief that I wasn't good enough. It didn't matter what I did. I was never going to be good enough, and this really reflected back to me in my relationships, in my money situation, in my career. Everything in my life was really affected by this core belief that I had that I just wasn't good enough. So when we're in adulthood and we're trying to get into relationships and we are trying to do our best at our jobs and we really want to do a certain job but we just don't go for it, it is likely that that belief is in the mix somewhere. So what can we do about it, and how do we spot the signs of it? Because this is actually really important to notice when you are telling yourself that you aren't good enough. It might not be in those words, but it might come out as people pleasing, for example. It might come out as being overly critical of yourself. It might come out as not being able to really celebrate your wins in life. You might do something that's really amazing, but you don't really give yourself a lot of praise, even though the people around you are. You might still feel, oh, well, it's not that big a deal, for example. And when we hear this voice in our head, a really good tip for us is to understand that that isn't coming from you. What you're actually hearing is, well, for me, for example, what I was actually hearing was my dad's voice telling me that I should have done better, or I can do better than this, or that I was stupid. And it's really important that you manage to catch these thoughts when they come up so that you can really shift and change into the version of you that knows that they're good enough, because you are good enough. You are good enough just how you are. You are worthy just how you are. You are deserving of everything you want just how you are. You don't have to be any different. So a good way to change this belief and to really shift into that version of you is to write down what your wins are. So for example, get a pen and a piece of paper and think about what you've achieved over the last month. Think about even the small things that happened that you didn't praise yourself for at the time. And once they're written down, and you will get a list of things that you aren't really conscious of, but when you put your focus and energy into thinking, what have I done well? What am I good at? What are my strengths? This is a really good way of shifting that belief, because you start to poke holes in it. And if you want to go a bit deeper into this, a really good way to do this is by inner child work, because ultimately these beliefs are rooted in your childhood. So when you think of a scenario when you were small where you really felt like you weren't good enough, I want you to imagine that you can see your inner child as a person and look at them and tell them that they are good enough. And I know if you are not used to inner child work, this can feel really strange at first, But ultimately, it is a big part of the psyche. Your inner child is a huge part of how you are today. So it makes sense then to go back in time and really get to the root of where it started and reprogram from there. So what I used to do is imagine my inner child in front of me, imagine an image of myself as, say, a 6 or 7 year old, and talk to them and say to them that they are good enough. And it wasn't their fault that my parents did not think that I was good enough. And that's a really, really good way of getting to the root of it. And what you will notice when you start to heal that part of yourself and really integrate your inner child, because they are always there no matter what, you can't escape it. When you have a relationship with that part of you and you integrate it, what you will find is that, you will automatically start believing that you're good enough. You will automatically start to notice opportunities in life that you didn't notice before, because as we know with the subconscious mind, we focus on, and life is filtered through what our beliefs are. So if we have a belief that we're not good enough, all we're going to see is reasons why we aren't good enough. But when we start to believe the opposite, start to believe that we are good enough, we will start to see evidence of that in our reality and on the outside, and how people talk to us, how confident we come across, how we stop people pleasing, and even our boundaries. If you don't feel like you're good enough, you might be really nervous about setting boundaries with people. And when you start to believe that, yes, I'm good enough no matter what, you will have a confidence, and you will start to feel differently, and you will start to see opportunities in life that are leading you towards knowing that you're good enough. And with everything, this doesn't happen overnight. It is likely that you've had this belief for such a long time that you might not even be able to comprehend what it feels like to be good enough. And I certainly didn't. I couldn't imagine my life without this feeling of unworthiness and feeling of, just not being good enough for relationships. And, I would nitpick, and I would self-blame, and I would self-gaslight. I mean, if you were told in childhood, if you were angry, for example, if you were told that being angry was wrong, or you shouldn't feel like this, that can lead you to a lot of self-doubt. And it's your subjective experience is never wrong. It might not be the full truth of what happened, but your experience is never wrong, and you feel how you feel. And when you allow yourself to have that perspective just for the time being, what that also does is gives you an inner confidence as well, to be able to set boundaries and be able to show up for boundaries, because you know that you're good enough. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, and I will see you in the next video.